All right, we are back again. This is the Underground Experience. I am Mr. J. As always, you can check out our founder and our funder as well as our many radio partners and at www.empiremusic.com. Um, we are just waiting on tonight's guest, Seldom Seen, uh, aka John Muhammad, and we are getting ready to get him in just a second. We're getting him to accept the invite in just a second. We are looking for a new, getting ready to work with a new uh, radio partner and video partner as well soon. So we'll have more information for that upcoming. And right now we have Seldom Seen in the building.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How we doing, brother? How we doing?
All right, how's it going?
I'm doing good, man. It's a wonderful day. It's a little cold here in Michigan, but we still get it done.
No doubt, no doubt. As always, on this platform, we have everybody to come in and basically tell their stories, um, talk about their scene um, from where they started till now, talk about the growth of the scene, where they're at, and we'll just start it off with basics. You know, how did you get your name, and how did you get started, and what took your interest and brought you into hip hop?
Nice. Uh, well, if I take it all the way back, as a kid, of course, I grew up in a household, mother and father. Uh, my father was big into Motown, so I got hip to groups like the Temptations and the Four Tops, and I would find records around the house by Marvin Gaye, what's going on, and things of that nature. And then, I had my sister lived with her, and she lived in the household. She was a big fan of New Edition and the DeBarges and things of that nature. So I got hip to listening to music like that. My mom, of course, was kind of the oddball because she was in the opera. So I wasn't that big off into that then, but I heard the music and I got hip to people like Pavarotti and Beverly Seals and things of that nature. So I had a pretty good wide range of music that I was listening to. Um, Eventually, I ran into records like from the Jacksons and stuff like that, and they were kind of the before hip hop really took off, most of the kids were kind of into the Jacksons and things of that nature. So uh, I ran into if you remember them 45 records, I don't know if you
Yeah.
do. Yeah, it was kind of a smaller. They don't make them anymore. You could find, your big vinyl, but I don't know if they even make the 45s no more. I found one of them, started playing it, really dug the groove, and then read on it, and it said Prince, Soft and Wet. So this is kind of how, those old cats, I started getting hip to them. And then as time went on, something came out called MTV, and I'm seeing all these white groups and stuff on MTV, which was a different type of music. But I'm digging some of them. I'm learning groups like Journey and and Pat Benatar and all of these different. And then one day on there, do 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 do, Michael Jackson comes on there with Billie Jean, and I'm just like totally blown away. Then one day I come home and dun dun dun, da 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 da, Prince come on, 1999. So now I'm really like, wow, this is crazy. So this is the type of stuff that I was into as a small kid. As time went on, now I'm in the high school, and uh, one day something comes on the radio. I had heard, Grandmaster Flash, and I had heard of Curtis Blow and some of those older cats, but I heard it, but they didn't really pull me in. So I'm still into the Jacksons. I'm still into, the kind of the R&B music. And then I heard something one day on the radio, and it came out. LL Cool J is hard as L anybody. I don't care if you. And I went crazy after that. I was like, what is this? So, I used to get an allowance from my mother and father. So that was like the first record I went and bought was a Radio by LL Cool J. And then I got hip to like Run DMC, went and bought the Raising Hell album. And from that point on, I was totally lost in hip hop. Couldn't nothing touch it, nothing. So I'm listening to that on a regular basis, and just expanding it. When I get tired of those records, I go buy another one. Eventually got hip to like Ice-T and those cats, and just kept going with the hip hop. Eventually, I was in high school, and I met a cat named Slim. We had like a class together, and one day, he just started rapping, and I'm like, "Hey, I ain't never heard that artist before. Who is that you rapping?" He was like, "I wrote that." And I said, "What? You wrote that?" Because at that point in time, hip hop was still kind of new, so I didn't think nobody in Grand Rapids was even up on nothing like that. And I'm hearing him doing his thing. He's rapping, and at that time, it sounded amazing. And so then eventually he introduces me to a cat named Izzy Dope. Go over his house. This guy got a whole studio. So, it's happening very slowly, but, you know, I'm being pulled into hip hop, and I'm starting to meet people who's already a part of that community. Um, I don't, One day my family, they was like, we going to this talent show. I went to this talent show with them, and you seeing kids and everybody's doing their thing, and a guy came off stage. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's from Grand Rapids, but back then he ended up becoming, pretty, he did pretty good for himself.
Right.
Robert S. And I'm seeing him on stage at the beginnings of his career, and so I'm really starting to get it in my head that, you know, wow, maybe I could do this. Maybe this is possible, because it just didn't seem possible when I first heard it. This is only for cats in New York or something. And I had
Right.
never been to New York. I'm a kid, so, I don't know. It ain't nothing but, 12, 13 hours away. So all of a sudden I'm seeing a cat on stage called Robert S., and they saying he's from here in Grand Rapids, and he's rocking the Kango. Now I'm going to school. I'm seeing more people rocking the Kango, starting to address the hip hop part. So, and from there, that was like the core beginning of what kind of pulled me in. And me and Slim we was real cool at that time. So as he continued to rap and do his thing, uh, that kind of influenced me to start writing. And, you know, and from that time, I just kept writing, kept writing, kept writing. And then eventually, as we got older and we got out of school, we decided to, try this for a living. So uh, we started going to producers and cats who we knew who had a studio, Izzy Dope and stuff like that, and started making music.
Right.
And then eventually, you know, uh, you get with people and then it breaks off and this cat go his way, this cat go his way. But I continue to write and I continue to work on, music and stuff like that. And then eventually uh a family member had started, hanging around me called Tone Chambers. And he started coming around and I would play music for him and stuff like that, and you know, and then he was like, I think I want to try this, and he started building a studio, and eventually I got into some trouble. I went away for a little time. I came back, and he had a studio together and was ready to make music, and I jumped right in there. Me and him started putting stuff together, and then eventually other cats started coming through the door, Days Beyond, Mike Hunter D. Uh, and that's where we formed the group The Fist. At the time, it was just called The Fist. And we was
Okay.
making music and putting stuff together. And, eventually it was coming together. But then, like I said, if you do music, you're going to have peers where you with this person. You're going to have peers where you with this person. And, the thing is, if you still want to do it and do it to the fullest. You just gotta figure out a way to keep going.
Right.
So, I'm making music with them, but eventually, Tone Chambers kind of decided, he didn't want to do it no more or whatever. So the group disbanded and I went solo. And that's where kind of most people, especially in Grand Rapids, know me from, because that's where I came with the song Mozart. I see you had put that you had put the flyer up and you had took that song Regardless.
Yeah.
And that was one of the songs who came in that, in that era of music. Uh so and I started working with family members and stuff like that. And we just started, really trying to learn the game, trying to, figure out the best way to write songs. Then you got to figure out how to master it and mix it, to get the best sound that you can get out of it. And then you got to figure out, you're basically trying to learn the business side of it, how to book
Exactly.
yourself shows and things of that nature. And it does take a while because the thing about where I'm from, Grand Rapids, Michigan, which you heard, certain little groups here and there who, was able to touch the scene and do some things. But we didn't have no Puff Daddies. We didn't have no Suge Knights. We didn't have nobody that we could go to actually show us the right way to do things. So we just learning it as we go. And of course, usually that takes a lot longer, but eventually we started to figure things out and, you know, figuring out how to book your shows and figuring out, and, of course, internet is starting to take off by then. So, trying to learn the internet and how to maneuver through that you know, and eventually things started to come together. Long story short though, uh, eventually I went solo, started doing my own solo thing. Uh, Mike Hunter D came to me, and he wanted to continue to make music. By this time, I had built my own studio, so started working with him, and then other people started coming. CLR 120, eventually Big Shotty, cats like that. They started coming to the studio, and from that point on, we just started making music, started doing shows, figuring out how to do videos, and and it's just small steps, but eventually you come to a point where you're doing pretty good, and you actually making waves, and people are recognizing you in the store and things of that nature. And it really wasn't until, like with me and you
Hmm.
recognized me, you know me from the podcast. I didn't start the podcast until the epidemic hit, that
Yeah.
COVID, because you couldn't move around no more. You couldn't, wasn't nobody doing shows no more because, this thing is out here and it's really, it's making people sick. So that's how the podcast show came into play. And so I'm working on that, and years go by and it's getting better and better, and things of that nature. And then I'm using the podcast because I'm able to get in contact with people, and we're coming together, and just like me and you,
Right.
and and then pretty much when this COVID thing had uh, subsided or whatever, if you want to call it that. I was kind of at the crossroad of, I want to jump back on this music. I got this podcast, so I was really going to let the podcast go and just focus back on the music because that was my first love. But
Right.
then, people was calling me and hitting me up like, man, you can't let that podcast go. That could be a really strong tool, especially in the future. So now I'm trying to, master both of them and go in between both of them and use both of them to, push my career forward. So this year, the 26th will be hopefully a really strong year for me. And, I have a pretty good balance of doing podcasts and putting out music and, trying to keep those things balanced. But, but that's pretty much, the core beginning of Seldom Seen. How I got the name Seldom Seen, I was in the county, uh, and I had ran into a brother. Me and him had became really cool.
Hmm.
You know, most people who know me, I'm not a big talker. I only talk when, people ask me to talk or I'm trying to give some information, but I'm not somebody who just, talk, 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 talk. But he said one day I was coming out, I don't know, for child or something, and he hollered out, "Seldom seen a cat." How did he say it? Seldom seen a cat who's rarely seen but always heard, or something like that. He said, and so
Huh.
that name just kind of stuck with me, and it was just always kind of in my head. Seldom seen, seldom seen, seldom seen. So so that's really how I got that name, and it just kind of stuck. And I started using it, then the people around me started using it. They all liked it, and that was kind of the name that just kind of stuck with me. So so in a nutshell, that was pretty much the beginning of how I got things going, how we got things popping, and how we got to where it is today, to where we can go out, do some shows. uh, People's hit me up for wanting to come on the podcast show and things of that nature. So I say that for the younger cats that's starting out, it's going to take some time. You're going to have to build. You're going to have to take steps. But the good thing about it is we got the internet. We got so many people out here doing hip hop music and stuff now. So there's so many cats out here that you can go to where when I started, we didn't have those cats around because didn't nobody know. If you really wanted the hip hop scene or learn about the hip hop scene, you basically had to go to New York or something like that. This was even before it popped off in California, it popped off in the South. So, that's kind of how deep my roots go in hip hop. So, uh, so pretty much with that, just kept building to, pretty much to where we are today. So,
Uh, so how was it when you first, got into the studio and, you know, started trying to build what you wanted to be? How was that process when y'all first started putting your first songs together?
mm. now that I look at it, probably pretty messy. Because like I said, the information wasn't always there. It was a couple cats that I knew who did like gospel music, R&B music. There was a cat named Dennis Witherspoon um, that did like R&B and gospel music, and I would go to him and ask questions and things of that nature. But the process is basically you just do it. You do it, and then you start figuring things out. I can go back and listen to old songs that we did back then, and you hear distortion, and you hear this, and you hear that, and the mistakes that of course, I wouldn't make today, but we made it back then, and so it's kind of on the job learning. Um, but we would just get in there and do it. And, we get, eight guys in the studio. Okay, you go. Kind of probably a Wu-Tang Clan thing.
Mm,
Your turn, and then the best cats who flowed the hardest, they the ones who made the record. So, you know, so it was pretty much that type of process. But we got it done. Everybody, you know, at that point in time, really wanted it. Like I said, as time went on, some cats decided they didn't really want to do it no more and got bored with it or whatever. And people like myself, we just, somehow just kept going with it. I just, had a true love for this game and wanted to learn it and wanted to become, the best that I can be. you
mm,
know, at that time, your mindset is, superstar, to where now I'm more or less like, with the internet and everything going on, you don't have to sign to no labels and all that stuff no more. You can,
right.
because of the internet, you can master this independent game and, hopefully be your own man, be your own boss, and do the type of music that you believe people uh, would dig and love. And because I'm a little older now, of course, I want to, my thing is to do music that's going to help educate, so when you listen to my music, you don't hear a lot of explicit lyrics and things of that nature. It's so much of it out there. It's, to me, Prince always said, if everybody go right, I'm going left. And so I try to follow that same blueprint. I think the music that's going to last is the ones that, because I try to see it, I'm looking into the future and I'm like, you don't know what the future is going to hold, but if it ever
Exactly.
comes a day where it's a war and, they ain't going to want to hear about how she making it clap and all that stuff. They going to want to hear about,
Right.
how to survive, how to make it. So, that's the type of music that I focus on. To try to give, the future. Uh, my grandkids, great grandkids, great great grandkids, when they say, what kind of music did Papa John do? I want them to go and listen to something that's gonna, feed their soul, feed their spirit, and give them something to where, when it's implanted into their brain, they can use it later on to try to, you know, uh, do some things, make some real changes in life. So that's
Right.
pretty much the direction that I try to go in. And I try to, and most of the cats that are around me, they know that about me. So they know, come with the records to, where you really talking about something of importance. I just don't like getting on the mic talking about anything. So pretty much, with that, uh, I follow a certain blueprint. And up to this point, I think it's been working, and we've been doing pretty good with it. So, but that's that Grand Rapids music, that Gunru music. I think that I look at myself as being one of them that's at the beginning of it, and hopefully I've done enough to where some of that sound that comes out of here, later on, you'll hear some cats say, "Yeah, I got that sound from Seldom Seen. I got that sound from the Fist Coalition." So, give or take.
Definitely. Um, And with that process, do you find yourself kind of going in, and when you're writing, do you kind of, go in and it's kind of, hour plus a pen and a pad, or is it kind of, you want to, there's so much you want to say that you kind of put down what you got first and then kind of come back to
Yeah, it could be both. It's there's no set process. There's times I've went in the studio and I've spit half a verse, uh, and then came back later and spit the other verse. My preference is to do it all right then and there. Uh, to get my main thing is to get that lead vocal just right, because everything else kind of falls into place after that, ad libs and things of that nature, doubles, whatever. But to get that lead vocal the way it's to where I'm like, yeah, okay, that's the take right there. And back in my younger days, when the ego was a little more bigger, and you hear about Jay-Z and all them cats, you would hear about him going in there. He'd do it one time and walk out the studio, and everybody be like, that was amazing. So,
it.
you go
Right.
through that process after a while and you do it. But, ultimately you just go in there and you do it and you do it until you get it right, until it sounds right. But back then I didn't totally understand the engineering process of it. So a lot of times you could go in there and you're spitting good and it's but then the engineering part of it, something that wasn't quite right on that end. So man, you got to go in there and do that again. It ain't on you, it's on the engineer or whatever. So once
Yeah.
you learn that process, you just make sure you go in there. You do several takes, as many takes really as it takes, to where everybody's like, okay, we got it. You're spitting good. It sounds clear. You know, uh, everything about it. And then once you go in and you start mixing it, little mistakes or something like that, you can kind of fix that through the mixing process. But yeah, yeah, So it's just all a learning process, man. It takes time to learn music, and it takes even more time to learn the music business. So you gotta be patient. Hopefully, if you got somebody in your life that kind of already knows the game and knows how things work, then things can move a little bit faster. But if you come from where I came from, most of us, it was on the hand, it was on the job training. You figured it out as you go, and so that's what kind of happened. But both, you know, if I can go in there and I can knock it out in one, that's wonderful, that's beautiful. But sometimes you might have to, I go in there, I spit it. That night it sounded like gold, and then I come back, I listen to it the next day and was like, nah, that ain't it. That ain't it. And then you gotta go in there and try it again. So it's there's no set, way of doing it for me. I just go in there, I do it. If it comes out perfect off the first one, wonderful. But most of the time, you're gonna have to go in there and work it out. And I've always said that music was like putting together a puzzle. You know what I'm saying? Every piece ain't gonna fit. You got to find the right piece. You got to find the right, and then when you find that right one, bam, there it go. And now you slowly putting that puzzle together until all of a sudden you got a picture. You know, and for music, hopefully, it could be a masterpiece. And the same thing, same process with a song,
All right.
same process with the whole entire album. You know, you got certain songs that go together. All songs don't go together. If you're putting together an album, everything has to fit like a puzzle. Excuse me. And once you can master that formula, then you become a dangerous man on that mic, dangerous person in that studio. But Cass is figuring it out. I was just looking at Lil Wayne, and he was saying, "Hey, man, I get invited to the clubs all the time, but I want to be here in the studio because this is where the magic happens. I
All
could
right.
be out partying and doing this and doing that, but that's going to take away from the music. and the music is the love. That's what made your heart beat. So, so with that, uh, we just go in there and do it. With that question, really no set formula. Just go in there and do it until it's right. So,
Well, a lot of what's coming out today seems to not have a message. So I'm glad to hear that you really put a lot of thought into what you're doing and how you're bringing everything together. Um, you talked about performing and learning how to perform. What was kind of the first time y'all were able to get on stage and what set that, you know, set the stage for y'all to kind of evolve?
well, uh, doing live performances. Now that's was something that was always in me because, like I said, I started off watching the Jacksons, Michael Jackson, Prince, things of that nature. Those guys were big into the live performance, the band, and all of that. Me myself, if as far as I can go back real quickly, here in Grand Rapids, I think it was at the Wealthy Theater. Was probably the first time I stepped on stage. Uh, and I still have footage of that. And of course, I look at it and grimace a little bit because, you're young. This is the first time you're on stage. You think you know what you're doing, but you ain't there yet. We're close. But I remember going on stage, heart beating, 100 miles a minute. But the thing is, you got to get it. You got to go up there and do it. You're going to be afraid, you know, palm sweaty, things of that nature. But if you can, get past that, then the next one comes and the next one comes. And you start learning how the crowd reacts, what songs move the crowd, things of that nature. Then I started going to the internet, and now I'm studying cats like Busta Rhymes. I'm studying Nas. I'm studying Jay-Z. I'm studying, all of these cats who's doing it professionally. And, I'm talking to other cats and they talking about crowd control and it ain't just going up on stage doing music, but it's
Right.
also you having those moments where you'll talk to the people because you want them to know who you are. You want them to know what you're about, and you're trying to get that connection with them, So it ain't just going up there and you rapping the music. Uh, Things like, and I hear so many people say it, and luckily I wasn't somebody who uh, in the beginning got off into that, but you hear a lot of groups go on stage and they got their lyrics already
Yeah.
playing while they rapping the lyrics. And, I never did that from the beginning. And it wasn't like I knew it. I mean, if you up there singing live, you're supposed to be singing live. It shouldn't be a track already. So I never, really made that mistake too much. And then, of course, you learn later on that a lot of people that's in that position, a lot of them talked about how they hated that. They hate hearing people rapping over their lyrics and things of that
Yeah. Yeah.
nature. So you learn all that stuff, basically just doing it. Like I said, on the job training, you go and do it and you're going to learn from your mistakes. You're going to learn, you know, breath control, being able to move. I'm the type, I like choreography, not a whole lot, but, I never was into the everybody on stage just hollering the mic at one time. It should be order up here. You dig
Yeah.
what I'm saying? It should be order up here. And okay, it's this guy, so we back him up, and it's my turn, so y'all back me up, and and we might have some moves that we all do at the same time, or we all got the crowd, but we're in sync. Everybody just ain't up there and is looking chaotic. I never did dig that, but that probably came from watching Michael Jackson, watching Prince, and watching some of those groups, back in the 80s that, when they hit that stage, you was just kind of in awe. So, uh, but there's nothing like that live performance. If you can master that, if you can get that down, that will make you fall in love with being on stage and interacting with the people. Uh, Bringing other things like the last show we did, we would do things like, we got a prize for somebody. We gonna spit these lyrics, and if you can finish it, you get a T-shirt or you get a hat or something like that. And that's just bringing the people into your performance. So just being creative, man. Being up there on stage and just being creative and coming up with ways to, get the people involved, get the people to clapping, get the people to dancing, you know. Uh, when you're doing those important songs, are they really listening, or, are they into their phone and doing, other stuff? So I've been blessed enough to where usually when I hit the stage, people pay attention. And so that told me right then, okay, I must be going up the right road. I must be doing the right thing, because, you can tell when all eyes are on you.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, so in a nutshell, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I love to perform. That's probably the biggest love right there, is the live performance. That's the one because that tells you whether your music is good or if it's whack, whether you're good or you're whack. Do you got some things to work on? You know, uh, how did the people respond to what you was doing on stage? So, uh, and for me, that's the ultimate. You got the studio, I love that. Going out shooting the video, I dig that. But the live performance, that's when that heart start, doing like that, because now it's time. And if we
Mm.
can kill this, we got them. And then when you kill that, that's when people are going. They'll purchase your T-shirts and hats and things of that nature, because you done made them smile now, or you done made them think, or you made them have some type of a feeling. So now they, hey, I want to support you. So now all of a sudden they over there buying your merch, and now all of a sudden you're starting to make even more money. So
Yeah,
hopefully that answered your question.
definitely, definitely. As far as developing your set, how did you come along and develop the set? When you start, performing,
Uh,
developing like that list and.
yeah, I guess in the beginning we did with whatever we had. Like I said, it's a learning process. In the beginning, we performed the songs that we had. We only had a few, so those are the songs that we had. In the beginning, that's when I started figuring out, you know, the mixing process, because you get out there on that stage and sometimes the music didn't sound good. It didn't sound right. And well, why is that? And then you start learning, oh, okay, these songs needs to be mixed. Okay, well, you go buy some books. Like I said, once the internet, got to going, now you could go online. You can pretty much go, YouTube all day, and they'll tell you and teach you everything. But of course, before the internet really took off, you either went and found you some books, or you was able to find somebody who could, educate you
Mm.
in that area. But now, you know, uh, I do think about, I remember Kanye West, I think when he made the Graduation album, he was saying, I made that album for performing in arenas. And
Right.
I was just like, I didn't quite understand that, but it was just something that I was just like, okay, performing in arenas, I've never performed, in an arena, of course, clubs and things of that nature. But now I get a better understanding because of going to clubs. And, I would sit in the corner and listen to how people music sound. And so now I would pick songs that I know this sounds good. We performed this before. Every time we perform this, the people get up out their seat. So now I got a nice, catalog of music. Um, all songs that you do ain't necessarily for performing live.
Right.
Some of them they don't. They might sound good, in audio in your car or whatever, but they ain't
And it's
necessarily good songs to perform live. Right. So, and you just kind of learn that through experience. You just know the songs that, we have songs to where wherever we go, okay, we can perform this one, we could perform this one. But then there's some songs, okay, this one works in Michigan, but it's not going to work in California.
right.
It works here, but it's not going to work going south. So, and you just kind of learn that through experience, just doing it and traveling. We've been all over the United States, California, New York, of course, here in Michigan, Denver, all the way to Europe. We went all the way to Europe performing music. Uh, so, you know, and everywhere it's different. Everybody's, they got their own vibe, they got their own culture of how things work. And then you just get in that culture and you just kind of learn and you feel things out and you talk to people and you kind of see what they like and who they listen to. And going over to Europe was a crazy experience because of course you get a chance to hear somebody who's way overseas, but who do you like in America? And they telling you, we like this and that and that and them. And I was very surprised. They was heavy into, what I call hip hop, real hip hop. You know, I go into clubs and they bumping Mobb Deep and you hearing Nas and you hearing, it wasn't just, club music, but it was actually, the stuff that I would play in my car and so I was real surprised at that. But yeah, you kind of just learn it through experience. I can't really tell you what song, you do it, you play it, and then you see how the people respond. You see how the people, and then you get out there when your show is over, go out there and talk to the people and see what they think, you know. But but you gonna have to have tough skin because everybody not gonna like what you do, and you can't get offended by it. You just got to take it in and see if it applies, and if it applies, then you go back to the studio and you start, trying to make changes and better your sound and try to better your approach of how you do your music. So I can't really say it's just through, you learning, you figuring it out. Uh, so that's pretty much it. Just, you figuring things out. So, um, as you go, that's how I've learned most of what I know is on the job training. So,
Figuring things out. You know, in Michigan, you've had cats, from Flint, Michigan, Breed.
yep,
Uh, you've had, other places in Michigan bring out folks like the Dayton family.
yep,
Uh, of course, the most obvious, biggest name is Eminem.
yep,
Uh, a lot of people out of the Detroit area, the Trick, Royce the
yep,
5'9".
yep.
How did that, really affect the growth, from when you first started till now?
Well, yeah, Detroit is somewhere, we you easily can get over there. So all of a sudden you're hearing these names of people who's out there. They're getting signed. You're seeing their videos and stuff on, TV, and they're actually doing it on a high level and on a professional level. Um, yeah, Detroit, Eminem probably, definitely the biggest artist to come out of Michigan, and pound for pound, one of the greatest MCs to ever do it, in my book. Um, but yeah, just to look at them, to learn from them, um, to see, you know, uh, like uh, I don't know if you remember Super MC. Unfortunately, he's locked away now, but
Hmm.
he was actually in the 8 Mile movie, and I remember meeting him in Detroit, and we talked, and he was telling me kind of about that experience of being on set. And so, you know, and with that, that's when, I was already kind of going toward there, but, trying to get off into the movie scene, because even going to be on set, you might be an extra or something like that, but you meet a lot of people who do music, even on the on the movie scene. So,
Hmm.
Royce, those cats, they so lyrically incredible. It teaches you it's always another level. You can push yourself a little bit harder because there's another level. And then you start hearing these cats and, Lil Wayne talking about how he, excuse me, how he writes every day. I remember at a time where you write here, you write there, or you write when you get a beat, to where now I try to make it a point to take time out to, even if I don't never use it, you know, uh,
Yeah.
exercise your skills like a ball player. I take a lot of points from like even Kobe Bryant, who's, a basketball player. But if you study Kobe Bryant and you study how hard he worked at basketball, he was one of the first cats I heard when cats would be, hey man, we going to the club tonight and champagne popping. We got girls. And I think it was Allen Iverson he was talking at, and he was like, Kobe was like, man, I'm about to go to the gym, you know. And here it is,
Hmm.
11, 12 o'clock at night. I'm headed to the gym, bro. So,
Yeah.
and now you see the legacy he left, and why he was so good. And for somebody like him to be compared to a Michael Jordan, if you really look at it, not to, but I'm going to basketball because I'm gonna bring it back to music. But you looking at Michael Jordan, of course, in most of our eyes, the greatest, uh,
Yeah.
uh, the greatest player to ever play the game. And Kobe's, could be a close second. It's argumentative, but uh, Jordan, damn it, it seemed like he could fly. Kobe didn't have the ups that Jordan had. Kobe didn't have those big old hands that Jordan had, to do all that stuff. But yet he worked so hard, you would think he was damn near identical to Jordan. That's how hard he worked. He turned his body into somebody who was just unstoppable. So you look at all that and you're like, okay, if I apply that to music, you know, maybe I can, wherever level I'm at now, maybe I can turn it up a notch, because every day, you in the studio, you writing, you're producing music, you're mixing or mastering music or whatever. But you just taking that time to always master your craft. If you
Yeah.
want to master it, if you want to become great at it, you have to put in the work. You have to put in the time, you know. Uh, if you want to reach, you know, your highest potential. And when me and you talked, that was one of the questions I believe I asked you. Well, what is making it? What is that now? Is
Exactly.
is that getting signed and getting a $10 million deal, or what is that? And you broke it down very well. I think I asked a couple other cats that question, and they had very similar. Making it is, there's no such thing as, it's in here. It's in your heart. What is making it for you?
Yeah.
Everybody don't want to be, filthy rich. Is it rich? Is it rich is what that is? No. For me, doing the music that I love to do, doing it at the level that doing the absolute best that I can do it. And for me, making it is, I can do music and that's it. I ain't got to go to the 9 to 5, and I ain't got to go really getting a whole lot of odd side hustles and stuff. I can just focus clearly on music, and that pays the bills. That affords me the life that, I want, whatever that is. Some people want the mansions. Some people are cool with a $200,000, $300,000 home or something, or whatever. But,
Yeah.
uh, but that, to me, that's making it. So, uh, but yeah, watching those cats from Detroit, it was just building up that every time you looked up, you heard about somebody else out of Flint, out of Saginaw. Uh, I'm getting ready to work with some young cats out of Muskegon. Um, and you just hearing about, these people that's out there doing it. And with each one, it just builds more confidence in you to where, if they did it, I can do it too. You know what I mean? To where back in the day, because it wasn't as many people doing it. So sometimes you got to see it to believe it. You got to see it in order to, now you can see it everywhere. And like I said, I talk to young cats, and, what changed about the game is I was talking to some young cats, and I was like, well, who do y'all listen to? And they was like, and they from here, and they was like, we don't listen. If you ain't from Michigan, we don't listen to you.
Wow.
And I think, me and you had a conversation about that, and that's when I was just like, really? I was like, wow. And so I think I asked you that question. Is it like that from where you from? Is everybody like, hey, if you ain't from where we at, we don't really listen to you like that. So, so it's all a learning process. But yeah, uh, Eminem, Royce, all them cats, they all showed us there's another level. You're going to have to keep going because there's another level in which it just pushes you to become the best that you can be. Uh, I still feel like I haven't wrote the best song that I've ever wrote, that I've ever written. That's still somewhere in here. And in order for me to get there, I gotta keep going with the pen. So, but yeah, all them cats are very influential, and listening to their music, listening to the mix, listening to the mastering, uh, okay, there's still another level. I gotta get better. I gotta study a little bit harder. And then it'll come to a point where, okay, I got really good equipment, but I got to get somewhere where there's great equipment. So you go to other people's studio, and you just keep learning, man. It's just, once you think you got it, then you find out here's another door you got to go in, and
Mm.
here's another level of understanding, how to make music. So I don't think it ever ends. I think if you talk to somebody and they've been in the game 30 years, they still, trying to figure this out and trying to figure that out. I don't think you ever come to a point where there's nothing left to learn. I think even with Prince, before he died, I think, he was saying he put people around him that he can learn from. And it's like, man, you the ultimate. But even him, you know, being in the game as long as he did, number one hit after number one hit after hit, but he understood, there was things that he didn't know. and he would learn from people that he brought in the studio. So, but yeah. All these cats, and they all a little bit different. It's a little different now because sounds and stuff are changing. I
Definitely.
learned that when we went to New York, you know, and I was a little bit surprised because, anytime we go somewhere new, I always turn on the radio to hear what's playing. And I was kind of surprised with New York because I wasn't hearing what I thought was New York music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it really hit me how the South had really took over, because I'm hearing music in New York that sounded like it came from, the South. And I'm just like, wow, that's crazy right there. But, times change, and, you figure out, how to change with it. And, but now with the internet and stuff, I tell cats, hey man, do the music you love to do. Because if you love it, you'll find an audience out there that love it too. If you're good at it, you'll find an audience. So just do what you love to do and be creative in the studio. There's no set rules. That's the thing about hip hop. There's no set rules. Hip hop, when it came to the game, you could take rock and roll music. You understood that from Run DMC because their biggest hit was "Walk This Way,"
Yeah.
which was heavy guitar in it. You know, with hip hop, you can mix hip hop with any type of music that's out there. And so with me, like I said in the beginning, I came up on opera and things of that nature. So you hear that type of stuff and the productions and stuff that I do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Detroit, uh, to me, Mecca, in Michigan. Um, if you want to test your skills, you got to go over there. With us, Chicago's the other way, but we would go over to Chicago, even though Chicago is not Michigan,
Yeah.
but same concept. We go over there and we test our skills. I remember we performed in Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm.
We over there in Chicago, and this is how cold Chicago is. We hit the stage, right? They don't know us. All them cats turn their back on us.
Wow.
Turn their back on us until we started performing. And then them cats turned around and they was like, oh, okay, okay. Oh. You know what I'm saying? So it was
Yeah.
that type of situation. So, uh, and then that felt good at the end because it was like, did you see these cats turn their back on us? Like, man, we ain't listening, y'all. We know this stuff is garbage. And then for them cats to turn around and, standing there, started nodding their head and stuff like that. So, man, I got so many stories. It's ridiculous. I could tell you the story about when we went over to Chicago to perform and they started beating up rappers at the end of it.
Wow.
Hey, I'm for real, man. We in the club, not to change the subject. I ain't trying to, but we in the club, right? Myself, Mike Hunter D, uh, Tay Cass. I think we had a potty with us. We over there, networking, doing our thing. We hit the stage. We did our thing. We tore it down. And, you know, I'm there because I want to see other artists and stuff like that. Because I'm learning. I'm trying to see, what Chicago Cats is doing. All of a sudden, I'm standing here. I'm watching the show, and then bam, you know, it's like somebody pushed me, and I kind of hit the wall. So I turn around. I'm looking. I'm like, what the nothing. So I turn around. I'm looking at the show. All of a sudden, it happened again.
Mm.
So now I'm turning around, in defense mode because now I'm like, okay, somebody want a problem. Okay, I turn around, I'm looking at faces, and they seem to be just as bewildered as I am. So, um, and I'm not quite understanding. I'm looking, and all of a sudden, way in the back, you could see chairs flying. But what
Hmm.
happened is they started fighting, right? And
Wow.
so, now people are being pushed because, chairs are flying. And so I look at my man, Tay Cass, and I pointed at the exit. It's time to go. So by the time we get outside, we go through the exit, da 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 da, go down some steps. Now everybody's coming out, and it's wild. They tripping, people fighting. We don't really understand what's going on, but people fighting is going crazy. And now we finally get back to the vehicle. We got everything packed up. Now everybody is outside, and it's fights here, fights there. It's going crazy. I'm telling my man, we got to get out of here, bro. Um, I remember looking over out the window, and I see a guy that was on stage. He was performing.
Hmm.
Now I see him on the concrete. He getting drilled by about 4, 5 cats. His Converse is in the air.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden we trying to get through these people without running nobody over. And all of a sudden I see a group of cats, and they turned around. They looked at us and said, "There they go."
Wow.
I tell my man, punch it, because they wilding out here. So as he's punching it, they got close to the car. They kicked the car door, put a footprint in it, and but that's some of the we got away, of course. But that's some of the crazy stuff that we've been through. Just being out there torn and stuff like that. Fun at the time. It was a little but just it's a wild game. But if you're adventurous, man, and later on you got some hella stories to tell. But yeah, Detroit definitely the mecca, and those cats, they influenced us all, man. So without a doubt.
Absolutely. We've kind of past our hour. You know what I'm saying? Everything's
Oh
all
wow, did it go by that
always, man.
fast?
Time goes by when you're
Yeah,
having fun.
yeah, yeah,
You know
it
what I
do,
mean?
yeah, it do.
Definitely have
I
to.
ain't paying attention to the time, so my bag. If I was talking too much, I just wanted to
Hey,
make sure.
this is what this is about. You know what I'm saying? People telling the stories and getting the stories out.
No
We
doubt.
definitely going to have to do this again. Do you
Yes.
want to shout out some folks before you get out of here?
You already know Fist Coalition. We got a great movement down here in Gun Rule, so it's a lot of cats doing a lot of big things. And 2026, we coming with it, man. Look out. I'm working on an album right now. I'm working on a mixtape too. I'm gonna be reaching out to some friends. I'm gonna be reaching out to you, see what kind of artists you got over there to start mingling with and making music and stuff with, man. But just keep a lookout, man. Grand Rapids is growing. We got a lot of great artists down here. Uh, Cats is learning the business of it, and cats are starting to make money. They starting to do shows, so we doing our thing, man. So just keep an eye out.
Mm. All right. We definitely look forward to networking with you more in the future. Definitely even collaborating.
Yes,
Um, so I always end it off like this, man. Nobody knows everything, but everybody knows something. So
yep.
network, network, network. And
There
with
you go.
that, we out.
Yes, sir. Peace.